Hi and welcome. I'm Sarah with Pasco County Libraries and you're watching Learn to Paint and Draw Better. So this month we're talking a little bit about the difference between painting a pretty picture and telling a story through your artwork. So I think anybody can learn to paint a pretty picture, but if you don't know what you're trying to say, it's just a picture of an object. So this month we're going to choose a found object. So if you don't have an object in mind that you want to draw, pause the video right now and go find one. Okay, so now that you found your object, we're going to do a little bit of a thought experiment before we start drawing this object. You can just sit and look at your object and draw a very pretty picture of the thing that you chose, but does it mean anything? So let me take you through some of my suggestions for how to better tell a story with your visual elements in your creation. Okay, so if you look at the first slide, there's a drawing of a pair of scissors. This is one of Raymond Logan's dailies and it's called Orange Scissors Standard Issue. And it evokes maybe some sort of emotion. It just looks like an ordinary pair of scissors. If you look at the next slide, what my class came up with is they said that these scissors looked like they belonged to a serial killer. I don't know about that, but they certainly evoke a different feeling from the other scissors in the other picture, the orange scissors. So how did the artists make these two versions of the same object feel so very different? So let's start. So look at your found object and we're just going to write down some quick words. This doesn't have to be a novel, just a few keywords. If you can only come up with 3 words, that's good enough for now. So grab some scrap paper and look at the object that you found that you're going to draw. And here's some suggestions for some keywords if you can't come up with some by yourself. So how does the object make you feel? Does it make you feel happy, sad, indifferent? Do you not care about it? Does it make you feel forlorn? How does it make you feel? What memories does it evoke? Does it make you think of a specific event or time or place or person? What associations do you have with the object? Does it make you think of other objects or other things? Other uses? What uses come to mind? So maybe if it's a pair of scissors, the obvious use is cutting, but if you look at the picture of these scissors, maybe another use for the scissors come to mind aside from cutting. So like my class suggested, maybe stabbing. So think of some uses for your object. And then I want you to use some adjectives to describe the object. Adjectives are things that you use to tell you about other things. So think of some adjectives of number, like is it big or small, many or few? So that's one example. Is there a lot of it or a little bit of it? Opinion, adjective of opinion, is it good or bad? Is it useful or not useful? So come up with some opinions about your object. Give me some adjectives about the size. Is it big or small? Tell me about the age, new or old. If it were a person, would it be young or old? Tell me about the condition. Is it in good shape? Is it in rough shape? Has it seen better days? And then tell me about the shape of the object. How about the value? Is it worth a lot of money? Is it worth something other than money? Does it have value beyond monetary? Describe the colors. What about the origins? Where did it come from? Tell me about the materials. What is it made from? If you feel so inclined, you can smell it and tell me how it smells. And if the smell evokes any memories or associations. Adjectives of feeling. How does it feel? And tell me about the purpose. Adjectives of purpose. Okay, so now that we've jotted down some keywords, we did our initial brainstorming, let's move on to the next slide. So we're going to look at some examples of shoes. You would be absolutely amazed how many drawings and paintings there are on the internet of shoes, especially Converse. I guess they've been around for over a century. So if you look at the first image here, they're two pairs of baby shoes, of sneakers, but they evoke very different emotions. So if you look at the one on the left versus the one on the right, take a moment and think how they make you feel differently. Some of the things the class came up with is they said that the one on the left feels sadder, and the one on the right feels more lively and active. Is there anything else that comes to mind when you look at these two? Some other things that the class came up with was perhaps these reflect how the children who wore these shoes were treated or regarded by the family. The one on the left, the shoes are kind of shoved into the corner. They're small in the frame. And the one on the right, the shoes fill the frame. They fill everything. They take up all the space there is. They're vibrant, they're red, they're lively, they're stacked haphazardly. The kid who wore the red shoes gets to be a kid. The one who wore the blue shoes maybe doesn't get to be a kid anymore, or maybe never did. The colors are also very different. The lighting is different. The one on the left, the shoes are in shadow. They're hidden. Maybe they were found behind something in a closet. The one on the right, these shoes were just worn. They're sitting in the light and they're lively and vibrant and active. The laces create movement throughout the image. They're messy. They have explored the world. Is there anything else you come up with? Okay, next slide. Two pairs of women's shoes. They have very similar colors in them, but they feel very different. They create very different emotions, sensations, and ideas. So if you look at the red shoes on the left versus the white shoes on the right, or maybe they're blue shoes, depending on how you want to see them. One of the things my class said is that the ones on the right you can wear to the church, but not the ones on the left. So that is definitely something to take into consideration. The ones on the right is something that your mom might wear and you wouldn't be embarrassed by it. The ones on the left are sensual. They have their back turned to the viewer, so you're kind of seeing a little bit into the darkness of the toe, but it also in a way evokes the image of a woman looking over her shoulder. There's part of the shoes in the red one are obscured and hidden. You don't see the whole shoe. You're only seeing the back side of it, the underside of it. Whereas the ones on the right, they're open, they're in the light, they're neatly stacked, they look clean and soft and feminine. Are there any other things that come to mind? The ones on the right, my class also said they look like they're on display, versus the ones on the left look like they were just kicked off and left there, maybe in a hurry. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. Okay, so these are two pairs of old Converse shoes. Both of them look like they've seen some stuff and they've been through some things. But again, they evoke very different feelings. They're both old and worn out, but the one on the right somehow feels more tired than the one on the left. What comes to mind if you look at these two images? How do they differ? So some of the things that my class observed is that the one on the right has a lot of dark colors. The shoes are sitting in the distance. They feel like they are tired, like the person who wore them has walked 1,000 miles in them. The ones on the left kind of feel like a teenager's shoes. There's these splashes of color around them in the background. They're, again, red and bright and lively and vibrant. Again, the laces are kind of draped haphazardly, creating this movement in the image. They're stacked kind of on top of each other with the toes overlapping. So there's a carelessness about them. Whereas the ones on the right are stacked very deliberately next to each other, like they're ready to walk another 1,000 miles if they had to. There's a carelessness to the red ones, the ones on the left. They don't feel tired in the way that the ones on the right do. Again, how does the artist create this effect? Look at the composition of the two drawings. In the one on the left, the red shoes fill up the whole picture. They're vibrant, they're lively. They fill the frame. The angle that you're looking at them is kind of dead on. The ones on the right, they're in the background, they're receded in the distance, there's a lot of deep shadows. There's space between the viewer and the shoes. Okay, how about these two? One of these pictures is a painting by a famous artist. Can you guess which one? The painting on the left is by Van Gogh. It was part of a series that he did. He spent a whole year just drawing the boots of workers, people who worked manual labor and worked very hard. So the boots on the left, they feel very old. They feel like they probably belong to a man. They probably belong to somebody who has calluses on his hands. The ones on the right, they're little girl shoes. They're shiny. They don't look like they've ever seen dirt before. This is a child who doesn't have to deal with the harsh realities of life, the things that this worker has to deal with. One of the ideas that my class came up with is maybe if you found a connection between these two, you might say that the one on the left is the father who works hard so that his child could have. Again, you've got deep shadows with the boots, and you've got a lot of light in the image with the red shoes. Okay, so the last image of shoes, again, two pairs of Converse. This time they're both black, and actually the colors in these two images are awfully similar, but they, again, evoke very different emotions based on the framing and what else is in the picture. So how do you feel about these two images and how do they differ? The one on the left with the shoes hanging on the wire, it shows a sunset. So that's a hint that maybe something is ending. Some of us know from popular culture that the shoes hanging on the wire could mean a number of things. It could be an indication of gang territory. It could be a sign that there's drugs being sold there. And sometimes they're also hung there by a bully, or they could be somebody who died and their friends threw their shoes up on the line. So there's definitely a feeling that things are ending there. These shoes will never be worn again. They are retired. You're looking at them from below. You're seeing the soles. You're seeing how far they've walked. The ones on the right, you're looking down at them. They're empty. There's movement, and they're haphazardly, the laces are very haphazard on them, but it's like you're standing in front of somebody, but there's nobody in their shoes. They fill up the entire frame. So maybe they fill up the whole thought of the person who drew this picture. Whereas the one on the left, they're part of the landscape. They've kind of receded into the sunset in a way. So these are just some examples of how you can use the formal elements of your drawing to create mood and to tell a story, even though you're just drawing an ordinary object. Let's look at some more examples. Now it's time to write a little story. Again, we're not writing a novel. This doesn't even have to be a short story. Just maybe one sentence about each thing. If you don't want to write it down, that's okay. You can just think about it too. So let's write a story about our found object. So if you look at your found object, where has it been and what are those places like? Was or is it important to somebody? Is it special or is it ordinary? What has it seen? How was it lost? Or how did the owner lose it or give it up? Does it miss its owner or does it celebrate its freedom? How did it get its scars? Pick one of the marks on the object and maybe tell a little story about it. Is it old or young, lively or tired? Does it have a gender? Does it desire or lust for or yearn for something? What emotions has it recorded? So again, let's look at the picture of the scissors over here. There's a lot of red in the image, red here with the purple, and then the complementary cyan here might indicate frustration. They look like they were abandoned mid-cut, and the picture is called Rusty Scissors. So maybe they were abandoned mid-cut because the person that is using them is very busy, or maybe they abandoned them because they're rusty and they're not cutting properly. You're not seeing the entire scissor, they're slightly obscured. And the emphasis is, they're off to the side, so they don't fill the whole frame, but the emphasis is still on the scissors because of the choice of color. They have the very bright cyan, even though they are on the red background, which dominates the picture, they pop out at you to the foreground because of the choice of that cyan. Okay. Now, I want you to think about how to use the composition of your picture to tell the story of your object. Since you've written your story now, or you've thought it out a little bit, let's answer some questions to move further. So, what colors does the story evoke? What colors does it make you think of? Maybe if it's a story about anger or violence, you might think of red or black, but not necessarily. What colors does it bring up in your mind? Maybe if it's a story about peace and tranquility, you might choose white or blue. What kind of lighting do you think fits with the story of your object? Is this object dominant or is it passive? Does it fill the frame? Is it big or is it small? Is it off to the side? Is it imposing or is it demure? Does it make itself prominent and known, or does it sit quietly in a corner, in the background, in the shadows, or in the light? Is it mysterious or is it just an ordinary object? We can add an air of mystery, again, by placing it in the shadows, by partially obscuring it, by showing it from an odd angle. So what angle best tells your story? Do you want to look up at the object or down at the object? Do you want to put the camera on the same height as the object to make it seem larger than life? Or the view, if not the camera. Is the background plain or is it busy? Is there a lot of action and liveliness? Is it dull or is it colorful? Are there movements or motions or gestures that carry through from the object into its surroundings? So there's another example of some scissors, Todd Gutman's red scissors. At this point, I want you to take your object, and for now you can use your phone. If you have a viewfinder, use a viewfinder. Place the object in different places, different angles, different perspectives, far away, close up. Look at it from the same height as the object. Look down at it, put it in the light, put it in the shadow, put it on different color backgrounds. Maybe drape some cloth around it. Take it outside, go pose it on some leaves, or anything that you think makes sense that might help you tell your story. Play around with different ideas and see what you come up with. I'll give you a moment. Okay, so if we look at this picture here, this is a deconstructed scissors. It's called Scissors to Cut Out, and I'm not even going to try to say this guy's name. So if you've looked at your different compositions of your found object, which one makes the most sense, or is there one or two that bring your idea to life most? Okay, so now, of course, my favorite part, it's time for a study. Some 5-minute exercises. I have a list of suggested 5-minute exercises on the slide. You're welcome to do any other studies that you want. So grab a stopwatch. If you don't have a stopwatch, your phone probably has one on it. If your phone doesn't have one on it, you can find a free stopwatch app in your Play Store or your App Store. So set your stopwatch for 5 minutes from now. And then we're going to do a study of your found object, drawing just the lines, and go. Okay, so now that you've done that, we'll do a study just drawing the tones of the object. So that means just how light or how dark it is. So draw your grayscales from either white, light gray, medium gray, dark gray, or black. So this is an exercise you want to do with graphite or charcoal. And go. Okay, next we're going to do a study about the shape of the object. So can you break it down into simple geometric shapes? And then, actually, I want to start this slide over, Mike. So, gang signs, cut, go back. So the slide for the study, Mike, the slide for the study. I'm going to go back and start that one over, just FYI, because I want to do voiceovers for what I'm doing on here too. Okay. So, once we get to that one.
And you say slide. Do over for this one. What did you have it on before?
So this one, so I talk about these scissors right before we start on this slide.
Okay, and when we get to this one, scrap it and you're going to redo this one?
Yeah, so I'm going to start over.
Going to redo this one.
Yeah, I threw my gang sign. Okay. Okay. So it's time for some quick studies. You know, it's my favorite exercise. So we're going to take our found object and you're going to study it for different things, different effects, to get to know it before you draw your final piece. So grab a stopwatch. If you don't have a stopwatch, you probably have one on your phone in your alarm clock app. If you can't find it in your alarm clock app, you can download a free stopwatch from your Play Store or your App Store. Set it for 5 minutes and let's study our object just by looking at the lines. So if I just look at my object and I just draw the lines that I see, this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not worrying about where these lines go, if my shapes are warped or kind of funky looking. I'm just drawing every line that I see. Okay, next we're going to study it by tone. So that's just the tonal values. So we're just going to draw what we see in terms of light and dark and where we see it. So I'm using my Procreate app, so I might be following a different method to you. You might want to use some graphite or charcoal for this. And this is how far I got before my 5 minutes were up. But I'm not focusing on lines. I'm not worrying about if this is an accurate drawing. I clearly have my ball too far in the corner. That's not important. I'm just studying the tones. Okay, next we're going to study the object by shapes. We're going to try to break it down into simple geometric shapes. So I'm going to try to draw every part of my object as a simple geometric shape. The tall little pouring decanter thingy was probably the hardest to break down as a simple shape. We're also going to look at proportions. So for the proportions one, I'm going to use my pencil. You can kind of use my pencil trick, or you could actually use a ruler held out at arm's length when looking at your object and kind of measure it. Or you can physically put your object in front of you on the table and measure it with a ruler. You can say like, this object is about the same height as that object, or the width of this object is about half the height of the object. So that's one way you can study it. So you can do it by actual size or proportions or whatever makes sense to you. And if you are doing it with a ruler, make sure that you're sitting upright with your back at the back of the chair and your spine straight, and you're holding the ruler at arm's length so that you may measure everything the same way. I do recommend using millimeters instead of inches for that. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the texture we see. Try to just draw the texture. If it makes sense, if it's relevant to you, we're just going to draw the texture. So for my one, it didn't much make sense to draw texture, so I didn't, because it was all smooth. Now we're going to just do the outline. So for the outline, whatever your object looks like, you're not going to draw any of the lines on the inside of the object. So if you put your object in front of a wall where there is a line between the object and the wall, that's what you're going to draw. So I had a little cluster of objects. So to draw my outline, I drew the outline around all of the objects, the entire cluster, and it looked like this. Next, we're going to draw the rhythm. Now, what's the rhythm of the object? So, are you crazy, rhythm? Okay, no. So rhythm is any repeating shapes or patterns or lines or any flow that you see in the object. So we're just going to try to find curves, colors, anything like that that repeats. If there is a specific line that kind of carries throughout the object, and that's very much kind of the design elements of the object. So see if you can find any recurring rhythms to your object. Okay. And finally, I'm going to do a study with color. So for this study, since mine isn't very colorful, I'm actually just reusing my tonal study, and I'm just adding some color to it. But just draw the colors you see where you see them. You don't have to worry about any of the rest of the things, none of the structure, nothing. Okay. You can go repeat these exercises, repeating them from different angles or different perspectives if you like, if it helps. And that's it for today. Next time we'll talk about thumbnails and how we can use them to plan our final piece. Thanks for watching. I'm Sarah with Pasco County Libraries.